The sound that detonated my life wasn't a scream or a crash, but the soft, cheerful ding of a new email on a perfectly ordinary Tuesday evening. I was sitting on the floor of our living room, surrounded by the colorful chaos of my 10-year-old son's school project, The Map of Me. Leo was beaming, his face, I thought then, a perfect, beautiful blend of his mother's smile and my father's determined brow. The scent of marker pens and pizza hung in the air. "Look, Dad," he said, his voice earnest with pride, pointing to a large, hand-drawn oak tree that took up most of the poster board. "I put you right at the root, the big, strong one that holds everything together." My heart swelled, a familiar, profound ache of love. He was my entire world. The email was from the DMA testing service his teacher had suggested for the genetics part of the project, a fun modern twist. We'd swabbed our cheeks together at the kitchen table, making silly faces. "Team Ellis," we'd chanted. I opened the PDF on my tablet, scrolling through the percentages as Leo went to grab a soda. "Look, buddy, 40% Irish. That explains your temper," I joked to the empty room. Then I scrolled further, past the Neanderthal variants, past the trait predictions, to the section titled DNA Matches. At the very top, in bold, Parent/Child Match, Leo, Ellis. My breath hitched with a familiar, profound paternal pride. My boy! Right below it, Close Family Match, 50% shared DNA. A sibling, perhaps? I clicked it. The name loaded, pixel by pixel. It wasn't my wife, Sarah's. It was my brother's, Ethan. The tablet slipped from my numb fingers and clattered onto the hardwood floor, the screen flickering but not shattering. In the space of a single suspended heartbeat, the entire narrative of my life, my marriage, my brotherhood, my fatherhood, rewrote itself in the cold, clinical language of a lab report. My son was no longer my son. My wife was a stranger, and my brother was a monster who had been living in our guest room for a decade. To understand the depth of this betrayal, you have to understand the history it's so utterly poisoned. My name is Mark Ellis. Sarah and I didn't just fall in love in college. We built a universe for two. She was this vibrant, artistic soul, all flowing skirts and a laugh that could draw you across a crowded room. I was the steady, pragmatic business major, the planner. We were the couple our friends called the anchors. You could rely on Mark and Sarah. We built a life with intention. A small but successful marketing firm I started from our spare bedroom. A craftsman-style house with a porch we actually used for sipping lemonade and watching the world go by. And after years of trying, of negative tests and 2 soul-crushing miscarriages that left Sarah hollowed out and me feeling helpless, our miracle, Leo. Leo was not just my son. He was my living, breathing legacy. I was the dad who never missed a bedtime story, who coached the T-ball team to a losing but enthusiastic season, who spent 3 weekends building an overly complicated treehouse that almost took my thumb off. He had my father's chin, I'd always tell people. He had my stubbornness. He was an Ellis, through and through. And then, woven into the very fabric of our lives, was Ethan. My younger brother by 3 years, the sensitive one, a genuinely talented musician who floated through life on a cloud of charm and squandered potential, while I was the one who laid the foundation and paid the mortgage. He lived in our renovated basement apartment for 2 years after a bad breakup, his guitar cases and existential crises littering the space. We paid his debts, listened to his dramas about unreliable bandmates, and his art. He was the fun uncle, the chaotic good to my lawful neutral. He'd show up with last-minute concert tickets, a new obscure vinyl, and a disarming smile that could make Leo shriek with laughter. Sarah was always his biggest defender. "You're too hard on him, Mark," she'd say, her hand resting on my arm in that calming way she had. "He's just finding his way. He has a different rhythm. Family is everything." I believed that. Family is everything. It was our mantra, the bedrock principle of our lives. It's why, when Ethan's band finally landed a 3-month tour across the Midwest, about a year before Leo was conceived, I was genuinely, ridiculously proud. I threw him a raucous send-off party in our backyard and, despite a tight month, wrote him a $2,000 check from our personal savings to help him on his way. "For gas, for food, for emergencies," I'd said, clapping him on the back. What I didn't know, what I was too blind and trusting to see, was that while I was at the office working late to cover that very check, he and Sarah were in our home, in our bed, having my back in a way I could never have conceived. The timeline, once I later dared to scrutinize it, was brutally, perfectly clear. That 3-month tour, the sudden, almost desperate renewal of passion in our marriage when he left, it wasn't a rekindling of our love. It was a guilty conscience, seeking cover and validation in my unsuspecting arms. They didn't just have a sordid affair. They constructed my entire life, my greatest joy on a foundation of their lie. They made me a willing, loving prop in their secret decade-long drama. The night I found out, I didn't confront them. The shock was too profound, a physical blow that left me hollowed out, a ghost haunting the shell of my own home. I carefully picked up the tablet, closed the email, and stored the knowledge away like a live grenade on a high shelf. Then I began my work. I became a detective in the ruins of my own life.
My investigation started not with accusations, but with observation. I began with our photo albums, the physical ones Sarah so lovingly curated. There was a picture from Leo's first birthday. Ethan was holding him, their faces pressed together, beaming, identical, crinkly-eyed smiles at the camera. People always said, "Wow, Leo looks so much like his Uncle Ethan." We'd laugh it off, a family joke. "Must be the strong Ellis genes," I'd always say, puffing out my chest in mock pride. The joke, I now saw, was on me. The genes were, in fact, exclusively his. I began listening with new, attuned ears. The ways Sarah would defend Ethan's latest irresponsible venture, a doomed rock opera, a surefire merch line, a little too fiercely at family dinners. The way he remembered tiny, intimate details about Leo's life, that his favorite dinosaur was a Therizinosaurus, not a T-Rex. His specific, illogical fear of the drain in the deep end of the pool. Details a fun, flaky uncle shouldn't necessarily retain with such precision. A month after the discovery, we were at a family barbecue at my parents' house. The air smelled of charcoal and citronella. My mother, bless her, was fussing over Leo, gushing about how he had my determination. "Oh, Mark, he gets that stubborn streak from you, no doubt about it. Once he sets his mind to something, that's it. Just like you with your business." Ethan, leaning against the deck railing and sipping a craft beer, smirked. It was a tiny, private, utterly cruel smirk that he thought no one saw. It didn't reach his eyes. "Yeah," he said, his voice laced with mockery only I could now hear. "He's a real Ellis, through and through." My fist clenched around my own bottle of beer, the glass threatening to crack. The casual arrogance of it was a physical blow. He wasn't just lying. He was luxuriating in the lie. He was laughing at me, at my parents, at the entire charade. The lies began to feel more brazen, as if they were testing the boundaries of their own audacity. I was helping Leo finish his Map of Me project,
the one that had started it all. He was listing inherited traits in his messy scrawl. I have mom's eyes. I'm messy like mom, and I'm good at music like Uncle Ethan. He says I have a musician's soul just like him. Later that night, the words still echoing in my head, I tentatively approached Sarah as she was sketching in her studio. You know, I began, keeping my voice light, it's really amazing how close Leo and Ethan are. It's a special bond. She didn't look up from her drawing, but her hand stilled for a fraction of a second. He's a wonderful uncle, she said, her tone carefully neutral. He's always been so good with him, so present.
Almost like a second father, I ventured, the words tasting like ash. Her face went pale for a split second, a flicker of pure panic in her eyes before she mastered it, slamming a mask of placid motherhood back into place. She forced a light, airy laugh. Don't let your dad hear you say that. He'll get jealous of his own son. The deflection was so smooth, so practiced, it took my breath away. I realized then that this wasn't a secret they kept locked in a box. It was a living entity they nurtured and protected every single day, with every word, every smile, every family holiday. The final straw, the one that snapped the last thread of my restraint, was about money. I'd been meticulously, sacrificially saving for Leo's college fund since the day he was born. It was a point of immense pride for me. Ethan came to me with a surefire investment opportunity, a stake in a friend's fledgling recording studio. I refused, gently but firmly. It was a terrible, obvious risk. He'd sulked. A week later, passing by her slightly ajar studio door, I overheard Sarah on the phone, her voice hushed and intimate. I know, Ethan. I'm sorry he said no. He just doesn't see the vision. Look, don't worry. Don't be like that. I've got some money from the last gallery sale. It's for Leo's future, but, well, you're his future too, aren't you? In a different way. I'll transfer it tomorrow. Just make this one work, okay? For us? She was giving him Leo's college fund. My son's college fund. The son he had fathered in secret. The son I was working myself to the bone to provide for, to secure a future for. She was funding his real father's latest doomed pipe dream with money I had earned. The audacity was breathtaking. The disrespect was so absolute it felt like a religious revelation. In that moment, the ghost haunting my house woke up, and he was fucking furious. I had to get out. I drove for hours with no destination, the rain sheeting down the windshield, blurring the streetlights into streaky halos, mirroring the blurred wreckage of my life. I ended up, as I suppose I always would, at the park where I taught Leo to ride his bike. I sat in the car, the engine off, and watched the empty, rain-slicked path. I could still see his little face, a mask of determined concentration under his tiny blue helmet. I could feel the weight of the bike as I ran behind him, one hand on the seat, my back already starting to ache. "Don't let go, Dad! I've got you, buddy! I'll never let go!" And I hadn't. Through every midnight fever, every skinned knee, every heartbreak over a lost toy or a friendship squabble, through science fairs and school plays and teaching him to shave, I was there. I was his dad. Biology, in the face of that daily, grinding, glorious love, felt like a technicality. But their lie poisoned the well. It made every cherished memory a question. Every shared laugh feels suspect, a performance I'd been tricked into giving for an audience of two. I sat there in the car, the drumming rain the only sound, and I finally broke. Not gentle tears, but great, heaving, ugly sobs that racked my whole body. A grief so profound I didn't have a name for it. I was mourning my son, who was still alive and probably wondering where I was. I was mourning my marriage, which I now saw had never truly existed in the form I believed.
I was mourning the brother I thought I had, the one I'd protected and supported, who had repaid me by carving out the very core of my identity. And then, as suddenly as it began, the storm passed. The grief hardened in my chest. It cooled and solidified into something new, something sharp, cold, and intensely purposeful. This wasn't just a personal betrayal to be wept over in the dark. This was a crime scene, and they were the perpetrators who had gotten away with it for a decade. They had stolen my choice, my truth, my paternity. A simple, emotional confrontation would let them off too easy. They would cry, they would blame confusion, a single drunken mistake, a moment of weakness. They would weaponize my love for Leo and beg for forgiveness for the sake of family. No, they had forfeited the right to use that word. They didn't get to play the family card, not anymore. If they wanted to treat my life, my love for my son like a game, then I would become the master player. I would not scream, I would not cry, I would not confront. I would dismantle. Brick by patient, deliberate brick, I would take apart the fortress of their lies until they were left standing in the open, exposed to the cold, judgmental light of truth. My revenge wouldn't be loud or messy, it would be silent, surgical, and absolute. And it would be impeccably, undeniably legal. Revenge, I decided, was not about hatred or violence. It was about reclamation. It was the systematic, intelligent process of taking back what was mine. My life, my financial security, my son, and my peace. My first call from a payphone outside a 24-hour supermarket was to a divorce lawyer named Angela Rossi, whose name was synonymous with strategic evisceration in courtroom circles. 2 days later, I sat in her sterile, modern office and laid it all out. The DNA test, the timeline, the financial support, the overheard phone call. She listened, her expression as impassive as a sphinx. She finally asked, "What are your goals, Mr. Ellis?" steepling her fingers. "Primary custody of both my children," I said, the words feeling powerful and true. "I want Leo. I want my daughter, Chloe. And I want to ensure they cannot spin this as a simple marital affair. This is a decade-long psychological and financial fraud perpetrated against me and my son." Her eyes glinted with something akin to professional relish. She guided me to a private lab to secretly DNA test my 7-year-old daughter, Chloe. The 2-week wait was a special kind of agony. The result? 99.9% probability of paternity. She was mine. A small, bittersweet victory in the ruins. It confirmed that Sarah's betrayal was a specific, catastrophic event, not a long-term pattern. Simultaneously, I opened a new, private bank account at a different institution and began slowly, methodically diverting funds from our joint account. Not enough to be noticed, but enough to build the war chest. I was no longer funding their lie. I became a master of strategic distance. I invented a demanding, high-stakes work project, a potential merger that required late nights and preoccupied weekends. Sarah, to my grim satisfaction, seemed almost relieved by the respite from my presence, the guilt no doubt easier to manage when I wasn't right in front of her. I used this space to double down on being the world's most present and reliable dad to Leo and Chloe. I was the rock they could cling to when the storm I was about to unleash finally hit. I was fortifying my role as their one true constant. Meanwhile, I documented everything with the cold precision of an archivist. I secured copies of the bank transfer Sarah had made to Ethan. I saved the DNA results in multiple secure locations. I started an encrypted digital journal, logging every suspicious comment, every financial sleight of hand, every private smirk from Ethan. I was building an unassailable case file, not for the court, but for my own resolve. The final, most delicate piece was my parents.
They adored Sarah and had a blind spot for Ethan's failures the size of the Grand Canyon. I needed them on my side, or at the very least neutralized. I invited them over for coffee one Saturday afternoon when Sarah had taken the kids to the movies. The house was quiet. I made my mother her favorite blend. And then I was calm, measured, and devastatingly direct. I showed them the DNA results. The color drained from my mother's face as if she'd been bled. My father's hands, usually so steady, shook as he held the paper. This can't be, Mark," he whispered, his voice rough. "There's no mistake, Dad." I then showed them the bank transfer receipt. "For 10 years, I said, my voice steady, belying the churn in my gut. "They have lied to me. They have lied to you. They have let us build our lives around a fiction. I am going to end this. I need to know you're with me." The devastation in their eyes was awful to witness, but I watched as it slowly, surely, solidified into a cold, hard anger directed at the true betrayers. I had secured my most important allies. The stage was set for my parents' 40th wedding anniversary party at an upscale Italian restaurant. The entire extended family, aunts, uncles, cousins, was there. The air was thick with the scent of garlic and expensive perfume. Sarah looked beautiful in a navy blue dress I'd bought her for her last birthday. Ethan was holding court at the bar, making a group of cousins laugh. I smiled. I circulated. I patted backs. I was the perfect, proud son and husband. During the speeches, my father stood, his voice thick with emotion as he spoke about family, legacy, and the love that had held them together for 40 decades. Then it was my turn. I stood, feeling a surreal, preternatural calm. I had a small, elegant gift box in my hand.
"Mom, Dad, happy anniversary," I began, my voice warm and sincere, carrying easily in the hushed room. "We all love you so much, and the family you built is our greatest gift." I then turned, slowly, to face Sarah and Ethan. "And I have a little gift for you two as well." I walked over and handed the box to Sarah. She looked confused but flattered, a faint blush on her cheeks. Ethan, from his seat, was smirking, expecting a joke at his expense. "Open it," I said, my voice still pleasant, almost conversational. "It's something I thought you should have." Together. The room watched, curious. She untied the silky white ribbon and lifted the lid. Inside, on a bed of black velvet, was a USB drive, and underneath, neatly folded, were the printed DNA results. She picked up the paper, her smile still in place. I saw the exact moment her brain processed what she was reading. The smile melted. The blood drained from her face, leaving a ghastly pallor. Her hands began to tremble so violently the paper rattled. "Mark, what is this?" she choked out, her voice a strangled whisper. "It's Leo's DNA results from his school project," I said, my voice clear and carrying, ensuring every ear in the silent room could hear me. "It's fascinating, really. It seems I'm not his biological father." A collective, sharp gasp rippled through the room. My aunt dropped her glass. "But look a little lower, Sarah. See that name? The close family match with 50% shared DNA? That's your gift. That's the man you should have been building a life with all along." Ethan shot to his feet, his chair scraping loudly against the tile floor. "What is this? What are you doing? This is insane." "Sit down, Ethan," I said, my tone dropping, becoming icy and commanding. It was a voice I used in boardrooms, not family gatherings. He froze. "This concerns you. It seems you're not just the fun uncle. You're the father. The USB drive has a copy of the bank transfer Sarah made to you from our son's college fund. You've been a family for a long, long time. You just forgot to tell the rest of us." I turned back to the stunned, silent room, to my parents' heartbroken faces. "Mom? Dad?
I'm so sorry to do this on your night, but the truth shouldn't have to hide in the dark anymore." I looked at Sarah, who had collapsed into her chair, sobbing silently into her hands. "The divorce papers are filed. You'll be served tomorrow. You and Ethan can figure out the rest. The children will be with me." I didn't shout. I didn't curse. I simply laid the truth on the table like a prosecutor presenting his closing argument, turned, and walked out of the restaurant. The sound of the erupting chaos behind me, the yelling, the crying, the accusations, was not the sound of a family breaking. It was the sound of my revenge being perfectly, flawlessly executed.
The fallout was nuclear, just as I'd planned and prepared for. Sarah and Ethan were utterly exposed, pariahs in the family and our wider social circle. The divorce proceedings were brutal, as they always are, but my meticulous, preemptive planning paid off in spades. I was granted primary custody of both Leo and Chloe. The court, presented with the evidence of the long-term deception and my unwavering role as the primary caregiver, recognized me as Leo's psychological and legal father, his rock, his constant. Ethan was ordered by the court to pay child support, a paltry, almost insulting sum he could rarely, if ever, manage to scrape together, a constant, humiliating reminder of his failure as both a man and a father. Leo knows the truth now. We told him together, in the safe, controlled environment of a child therapist's office. It was the hardest, most terrifying thing I have ever done. He was confused. He was angry. He asked questions I couldn't fully answer. But at the end of that painful session, he walked over to my chair, put his hand in mine and said, "You're my dad. You taught me to ride my bike. You'll always be my dad." That was the revenge that truly mattered. It wasn't their humiliation, not their financial struggle. It was securing the unshakable love of my son. I didn't steal him from them. They forfeited him through a decade of cowardly deceit. I was simply there, as I had always been, to catch him when their carefully constructed house of cards finally collapsed. I live in a new house now with Chloe and Leo. It's smaller, but it's full of light and real, uncurated laughter. The Map of Me project is framed in the hallway. I kept it. It's a reminder that family isn't just about blood roots. It's about the soil of daily commitment, the sunlight of presence, the daily conscious act of nurturing. I chose to be Leo's father every single day for 10 years, and I choose him still, with more clarity and purpose than ever before. People ask me if I'm bitter. I'm not. The most profound revenge isn't about causing pain to others. It's about reclaiming your own peace. It's about taking the bomb they planted in the center of your life and carefully, methodically disarming it, then using the parts to build something stronger, more beautiful, and utterly true. They tried to define my life with their lie. My revenge was to dismantle that lie and redefine my life and my son's life with a truth that is stronger than blood.